Well, welcome everybody to this BSI and ISO webinar today from ISO TC 176, the Quality Management Committee. We're looking today at building sustained success in your organisation. And in this session, why people are at the heart of that sustained success. Before we get going, I will just have a look at some housekeeping with you. This is a listen-only webinar and it is being recorded. You will not be able to turn on your microphone and speak to us, but we do welcome your questions and comments via the Q&A function. We're very keen, this is interactive, we want a conversation. And we will answer your live questions throughout the webinar. Please don't wait until the end. We'll do it as best as we can as the conversation progresses. Do let us also know if you're having any technical difficulties, because our technical team is on standby ready to help you. Use the Q&A function for that too. This is a CPD recognised event, so please do request a certificate via your feedback survey if that's useful to you, and you will also get slides and access to the recording on completion of that survey. Before we get into the conversation today, we'd like to show you a brief video from the chair of our Quality Management Committee, Geoffrey Hunt.
Hello, I'm Geoffrey Hunt, Chair of ISO Technical Committee 176. Our committee is responsible for the standards affecting quality management and quality assurance. ISO TC 176 is comprised of experts in quality management from around the world and includes participating members from 92 countries and observing members from 32 countries. Our committee and subcommittees are responsible for 21 published standards. Importantly, our work also directly supports 4 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The need for standards continues to grow in a VUCA world. The volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity created by global interconnectedness, rapid change, and technological innovation has resulted in organizations needing the benefits of standards to deliver excellence more than ever. About a year ago, our committee undertook to elevate the discussion about how existing standards can help users improve quality in their organizations. In addition, the committee felt it is important to communicate the positions on developing future trends in quality management. The Quality Day webinars were born out of these objectives. I am pleased you are able to join us today and know you will hear important discussions from our esteemed panel of experts. The 3 topics today are future concepts in 9004, innovation with emerging technologies, and why people are at the heart of sustained success. Each session is live, but the sessions will be recorded for distribution after the event. I encourage you to actively participate in the sessions. The panel members are looking forward to an engaging discussion. Thank you for attending and enjoy your Quality Day.
Well, without further ado, I would like to introduce myself and our panel of experts. My name is Sally Swingewood. I'm a Lead Standards Development Manager at BSI, the UK national standards body, and I also am actively involved in ISO TC 176 with my colleagues who are here with me today. If you can turn on your cameras, please. Fantastic, thank you very much. Sam, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name's Sam Somerville. I'm the chair of the UK National Committee for Quality Management. I'm also a consultant auditor and very involved in quality management in all its guises.
Thank you, Sam. And Louisa, please.
Yes, hello, good day to everybody. Thank you very much for the invitation to this panel. I'm Luisa Payares. I work as Manager of Special Project and International Standardization at ICONTEC, the standardization body of Colombia, and I participate in the technical committee of ISO TC 176, where standards related to quality management are developed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Louisa. Alison.
Thank you, Sally. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning to all of you. I am Alison Kajada, KMA consultant, management systems consultant, involved a lot in what we now say management for quality aspects, looking at comprehensively the systems that for business sustainability. Nice to be here with you.
Great to have you here, Alison. And finally, Gustavo, please.
Thank you, Sally. Hello, everybody. I'm Gustavo Pontoriero from IRAM, Argentina. I'm part of TC 176 since the last 15 years, and I'm the chair of Subcommittee 3, which is supporting technologies. And this committee is in charge to develop the guidance standards for quality management systems. So, yes, thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Sally.
Thanks, Gustavo, and I'm looking forward to our discussions this afternoon. I'm going to begin by talking a little bit about our task group in the ISO committee on emerging trends in quality and quality management. This group is very much where these webinars have sprung from. We would like to engage with you, our users of the standards, on what we are doing to look forward, to make sure our standards are forward-looking rather than backward-looking, that they are useful to you in the years to come. So we are exploring topics that are currently affecting quality management or quality in general, or those that we will foresee as going to affect quality in the coming years. Many of them aren't new. They're not necessarily new topics, but they may have new importance or be affecting us in new ways, or we may only now be realizing just how important they are to quality. In our earlier sessions today, we looked at agility, at innovation, emerging technologies. And this afternoon, we're going to look at the people aspects of quality management, why it's so important to consider those human aspects to quality, customer experience, demographic change, ethics, integrity. They're all absolutely fundamental to sustain success. And that's what we're going to talk about this afternoon, about why that is the case. If we can move on to the next slide, please. So many of the topics that were listed on the previous slide has explored a human element. So why are people so important to quality and to building sustained success? Alison, quality management often seems to focus on processes and systems. Why should we be focusing more on people? You're muted, Alison. I'm sorry.
Sorry about this, Sally. Why people? Okay, just a basic appreciation in management systems, whether it is for quality or you're managing risk, a process involves a set of interrelated activities, using resources to transform something, what we call an input, into an output. These resources inherently require the human being, the doing aspect. Yes, there's technology and you could have robotics included, but there is a process to programming the robots. And this is where the human being is involved in doing. The system with respect to the whole context of the organization, whether it is a church, a family, small business, huge business, or business unit. That system incorporates the interactions of all these processes, so all these activities. So why not focus on the human being? And this is what I'd add to that comment, Sally.
Thanks, Alison. Why not indeed? That's a great question. Gustavo, customer satisfaction is a key part of the Subcommittee 3 supporting technologies standards portfolio. Why is it so important to get this right, and what does it take?
Well, customer satisfaction or the customer relations with the organization who have a quality management system, we found in this committee 3, which is a key point of guidelines for the users of this kind of standards. So some time ago, we started to develop a group of standards within the 10,000 series, which is from 10,001 and 10,004. The 10,001, 2, 3, and 4 are a group of standards developed by SC3 related with the customers, with the customer relation with the company who has a quality management system. The first of them is the 10,001, which is related with the ethics, codes of conducts, and the relation, the formal relation between the companies and the customers, and the kind of guidance to establish rules on that communication. The other one is based on the complaints handling, which is 10,002, and this standard intends to give the users of ISO 9001 and quality management system some inputs to develop and to planify the complaints handling process within the quality management system. After that, we study a document related with conflicts management and the resolution of this kind of disputes between customers and companies. And all around this, we also developed the 10,004, which is the way or the guidance to establish a kind of customer satisfaction follow-up process. So with this group of standards, we developed all the guidance document to manage the customer relations with the certifier or the companies that implement this kind of quality management system. And we manage these 4 documents like a subgroup of standards within SC3, which is mainly related with the customer relations management. So also we have there customer satisfaction liaison team with the experts within these 4 with these 4 documents that are all the time monitoring what is going on in this aspect and which are the new inputs for this guidance document. So for us in subcommittee 3 and within TC 176, this is a key point because the customer is the kind of direct object of quality management system. So it's very important for us to develop guidance documents.
Thank you, Gustavo. That's right. In 9001, of course, the objective is customer satisfaction, ultimately. Yeah. So it must be central to everything that we do. And that sort of begs the question to Louisa, if you don't mind. Why is the Emerging Themes Group looking at customer experience when customer satisfaction is what we have traditionally focused on? What's changed? Why is it important to think about customer experience?
Well, it's very important. In recent years, the concept of customer experience and expectations has been evolving and becoming increasingly relevant. Customers now focus not only on the quality of a product or services, but also in the experience they have from the first contact with the organization and during and after all the process. I recently heard that according to a survey, people are willing to buy a product again or to receive a service again if it even if it has been non-conforming, but they do not tolerate poor customer services. I think you have experienced that when sometimes you go there and your product is not good, but you call and you have an excellent customer service that they provide you with some elements and provide the information and try to fix the problem quickly, but sometimes you don't have an answer, so that maybe drop the service or to continue acquiring that product or service. Finally, social networks have been also contribute to change this concept by allowing people to express their perceptions and fulfillment of their expectations regarding an organization, product, or services in such a way that it can affect the perception of expectations of another person without even having purchased the product or service. For example, when you give an opinion about a restaurant, or when you consult the review of a restaurant to see if you can go there, but for example, you have been never there in the restaurant, and you see the review and says, okay, no, the food is awful, the service is not good, I take 1 hour on the line. So you begin to think about that, and although it's not your perception and not your experience, you can be affected by that. So that's why it's important now to just not to think only in the quality of services, but people are expecting to have a great customer experience when acquiring a product or service.
Thanks, Louisa. So that really brings home the sustained success part of it, doesn't it? If there are organisations out there who are focusing their quality management on conforming products and services, it might not be enough, because if their customer service is falling down, then perhaps they're going to their competitors in other occasions. Is that what the bottom line is, do you think? Okay, Sam, let's have a think about another people aspect that we're looking at today, and that's demographic change. I don't think it's something that generally has been considered in quality management per se. I could be wrong, do correct me if I am. But do you think it's going to have a big impact on quality management in the future? What kind of things are we thinking about? What do we need to be considering?
Yes, Sally. Well, quality management is really very much about context, which obviously means that, yes, it is going to be impacted by demographic change. Things like aging societies, things like the gulf between older and younger workers, things like migration, education, the use and availability of technologies, environments, traditions, politics, even wars, as sadly we're seeing at the moment. So any changes, actually, whether that's locally or globally now, are likely to have an impact on the way that quality is managed in an organisation. And that impact could be through who the workforce is or where they're located, whether they want to work in particular industries, perhaps. It may be through the way that people are trained or communicated with or managed. And it might even mean that a whole new workforce is suddenly becomes available. Or even, as Alison mentioned earlier, that there might be some examples where actually people aren't needed greatly at all, and you still need to consider that. It's not even just about the workforce, of course, it's anybody who impacts on or is impacted by and changes to the organisation. So customers, the customer experience, that communication, suppliers, communities, whatever the change, the organisation needs to consider this as part of how they lead the organisation and manage quality, thinking about all of those things that we've just been discussing, and ensuring that they can effectively adapt to meet those challenges while retaining that confidence that they're achieving their overall objectives. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you. Takes me a moment to find the unmute button too, Alison. It's not just you. And we do have a question that's just come in, but I'm going to hold it for a little while until we start talking about 9004. So please don't think we're ignoring you, and do send more questions in. We will get to it. If we can go on to the next slide, please. Jeffrey Hunt, in the video that started this webinar, talked about a VUCA society: volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. And we really are living through a time of rapid change and uncertainty. From a people perspective, How do you think this is affecting quality management? Gustavo, if I can come to you first, please.
Sorry. Well, you said that the organization has had a kind of madness time these last 2 years, and they start to see how to be agile to incorporate some changes in the context, to know or to learn how to interact with their customers, how to redesign their products and services, and how to redesign their processes to work in a different way. So these are a big amount of changes in the organization needed to be sustainable in the next future with the new reality. So the people inside this organization had to accommodate, to change with the organization, to be useful, or to be aligned with the objectives, and to be really value-added resource within the organization. So the first thing they had to do is to be more agile and more adaptable to the changes, and this is mixed with the personal situation. Everybody in the world this time had some uncertainty on how is going on the pandemic situation, how is going on the business of their companies, how is going on the solution for the problem we had. Now we are facing a new reality, a new way to do the businesses, and that is for sure a factor that affects the people within the organization. So for the people, it's important to have a kind of long-term and medium-term view within their life, and how to customize their real situation with their work situation. And this I think this is the main factor that affects the people in the organization. And this, if as the people is the one of the principal pillars of the quality management, because they do what needs to be done. So it's very important to have them aligned and committed and in line with the objectives and the company goals. And this situation was not so easy to manage during this time. So the main problem that the organization has to face up with the people is to maintain them in the same channel, in the same way, to adapt to the new vision of the organization. Now, after the pandemic situation, there are some new problems, because I think the future is not what we were looking at the beginning of the pandemic. The future is something different in between the previous part and the pandemic situation, and all the companies had to redesign their ways to do business in this sense. So people now is adapting to a new change again, and they are learning from the pandemic situation. They are learning from the previous pandemic situation and trying to construct a new reality in their works, which is stressing, which is uncertain, and for sure will affect the quality on the capacity of the company to fulfill the customer needs and expectations. But for sure, the mid and long-term future will be different and more equilibrated than we have had the last 2 years.
Thanks, Gustavo. Sam, I'm going to come to you. I think the whole world is aware that the UK has experienced a lot of upheaval and insecurity over the last few years, not just the pandemic, which we will come back to, but political, economic, social, environmental. We've had all sorts of issues going on in the UK. Do you think that is affecting quality management in UK businesses and our ability to sustain success?
Yes, so everybody has had to deal with so many challenges recently, even to survive, let alone to succeed and achieve sustained success. So I think core to that survival has been the ability to respond quickly and to be flexible to those ever-changing needs. And I think quality management has become more and more important. Certainly, I've seen that, you know, companies with a good quality management system have been more robust. They've got that built-in resilience to support them through these things. Risk-based thinking and a process approach to coordinating activities to mitigating all of the risks and the challenges that we've been facing have been increasingly important and valuable to organizations. And I think from a people perspective, you know, supporting people to cope with challenges on a personal level, recognizing difficulties and working together to face those challenges and has actually brought benefits to quality in many circumstances through creating that culture where people feel valued and empowered, and also building that loyalty then back towards the company. So having the right people and the right culture in place to manage this level of fast-paced change, looking for continual improvements, developing strategies that can be quickly and effectively communicated across the organisation to bring everybody on that journey in a controlled way has been what's added the value, and it's been really priceless, I think, to organisations.
So you see there's been a benefit there?
Definitely, I think so.
Okay, great. So if I come to you, Alison, I mean, obviously the Caribbean goes through its own issues, different issues, possibly, again, all down to context, isn't it? Where do you operate? What's happening in the world around you? What are you dealing with? But are they the same kind of issues that Sam's been talking with? Are they different? From a people perspective, how is it affecting businesses in the Caribbean, all this change and uncertainty?
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Tali. In fact, it's very similar to what Sam expressed. The issues associated with uncertainty, rapid change are the same issues that we're facing. I mean, if you add cap onto that, the extra vulnerability because of our location, exposed to, of course, climatic issues, hurricanes, and heavily dependent on one industry, such as tourism, in many instances, particularly for the smaller islands, increases the gravity that I would say with regards to the fear. But what we found, and it's consistent with just what Sam said, is that the need to look for guidance, to put stability, an approach to managing in a more systematic way, methodological way, has not been as it has now with respect to the pandemic. I think that definitely we are seeing an increase, whether it is with regards to looking for new opportunities in terms of with the export market, but importantly, these sort of reliance on international guidelines of best practices that the ISO management standards offer has been gaining a lot of popularity. I mean, I'm speaking of, there are right now taking place EU-funded projects covering several of the small islands, assisting companies to implement these systems. And another thing that Sally mentioned, and even Gustavo, with regards to what the latest version offers with regards to risk-based thinking, focusing on the process, not the written documentation, but any form of documentation, providing more flexibility to the businesses. I think that really presented an opportunity to promote these standards. If it were the earlier version already had a very poor uptake with regards, it was just felt that it was too heavy with regards to meeting specific requirements. But for quality management systems, other management systems, including business continuity and even the core 31,000, we've been seeing some increased interest because it provides the guidance. One more thing I'd like to add that's at the core of the management systems for quality, focusing on the team approach, whether you call it quality circles, excuse me, but people working together under this pandemic environment. I thought that the pandemic really fostered that, which is what was already being promoted in quality management, looking at quality teams, etc.
So that's really interesting that actually that's the people part of it, the team approach, not having individuals responsible for everything, is something that you're seeing is driving success. It builds more resilience in, I guess, more continuity. But I was also interested to hear you say that uptake of 31,000, which for anybody who doesn't know, is the risk management standard, guidance on risk management. And there has been more uptake on that. Do you think it is a reflection of the times we're living in, that has become more popular?
Definitely, in terms of guidance on how to manage, and the SL Annex SL looks at, I mean, you core structure, but how do we treat with risk specifically in any sort of environment? If for those of the companies that are already involved in QMS, the QMS professionals will be focusing on, yes, the risk-based thinking approach, etc. But there has been some interest, although not at the certification level, because again, access to accredited certification services is very limited for the islands. But the interest in the standards in the documents has increased.
And I think it's good that you bring up the certification issue, Alison, because of course in TC 176, we don't write for certification. We write documents to help people improve their businesses. And certification is a route. It is really useful for some organizations at some stages in their development, or if they want certain contracts, for example, but it's not the only route. You can certainly get plenty of benefit out of the 21 or so standards from TC 176 without ever talking to a certification body. It's not what it's about. It's actually about taking those standards, using them as they are intended to get the full benefit, rather than doing them in a very minimal way to get a piece of paper and say, look, I have a certificate. I would like to come to Louisa now. I mean, we've touched on the UK and the particular circumstances on this small northern island. We've looked at the southern sunnier islands. Latin America is a very big continent, and Gustavo spoke from Argentina, you're in Colombia, very different countries, different parts of the world. Are you seeing similar issues? Are you seeing similar responses? And how is it affecting people in the quality management space? Are they adapting?
Okay, thank you. Yes, I am from Colombia, and I believe we are sharing some issues around the world that we are sharing with everybody. I mean that all are experiencing some things, and also we have particular things in our country. So I think this kind of context impact already in the quality management system and the quality management in general, because this context that we are living now, it's a little bit complicated. Rapid change and uncertainty demand quickly response and a high degree of adaptation, resilience. So I can see now that organizations are more aware of the importance of identify and understand how this context can impact in their operations, in the way that the things are doing, in the people. Before, organizations were not taking into account so many elements from the context, because you are in your market, you know, it's like you are comfortable in your zone. So no, you didn't have into account things like a pandemic that came from another country. So now you are, organizations and also people are more aware that have to pay attention more in things that are happening around, to see how they can impact in the operation or in your life, and how can you address that to maybe generate opportunities. Pandemic, it's not only about bad things, but also for opportunities to take. Many people have changed, for example, their motivation, their way to do things. The needs and expectation of the customers have changed now. So you have to begin to see how to address that and become that part of as an opportunity to address that, to comply with that new needs and expectations that have customers. So yes, I think that have affecting the quality management. I think now we are trying to be more prepared, and as say Sam and Alison and Gustavo, people is trying to be more flexible, try to understand more, and to be more careful with what is happening, and trying to adapt. I think that resilience is like the word.
Thank you, Louisa. And I'd like to move swiftly on to the next slide, because Louisa's already going there about the impact of the pandemic and the impact of managing people in organisations. You know, it's been a challenge, hasn't it, with many people working from home, for example, or factories having to close down for some time, or other businesses having to close down. And is it impacting our quality, was the first question I wanted to ask. But also, Louisa, you've already started to talk about the opportunities that have come out of it and the rest of it, which is, you know, anybody familiar with ISO 9001 knows that we always talk about risks and opportunities. They walk hand in hand through our standards, because we are aware that where there are risks, there may also be opportunities, and where you take opportunities, there's going to be some risks. So they're never completely divorced from each other, are they? So do you think these things are going to lead to permanent changes, or is it a short-term thing?
Well, I consider that change is always there. The world is changing, new technologies, new generations, new products and services. So always is changing, maybe in a different scale, but always there is present. Here is that you have the opportunity to take that change and become that opportunity, or to try to address that to minimize the impact in your organization. But the change is going to be permanent. I see it in a greater or lesser extension. And the important thing is try to adapt to the change and to be resilient. That is what we need to work on to survive this rapid change that we are living. So yes, I think it's going to be here for, as I say, a permanent thing about changing.
Thanks, Louisa. I mean, you're absolutely right. The one thing that never goes away is change. It's just the speed that it comes at us that changes occasionally, but that's a change in itself. So
yes,
it's about change.
Yes, also, if you see the pandemic, what have done is to accelerate things. For example, digital transformation was something that it was developing before. It was very slow, but the pandemic, the thing that it's not a result of the pandemic, but it accelerates. It helps to accelerate that. So now almost everybody is in the part of digital, in the digital world, but the world is the change is always there, always. So you have to try to see, understand, to pay attention of that change, because always is there.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Sam, are you seeing a difference in how organisations are actually managing people or dealing with people? I mean, not necessarily just the people in their workforce, but the interested parties. Is it generally changed? How is it affecting them?
I think there have been, like everything else, there've been lots and lots of changes now, and you know, I think generally positive, although there have obviously been some negative impacts as well, and particularly on some individuals. But I think, you know, one of the things is that people have actually felt empowered to walk away from organisations where they feel that they're not being managed well or treated fairly and with respect. So, you know, it's really raised the profile, I think, of how people are managed and treated within organisations. People expect to have good boundaries. They don't always get them, sadly, but they're expecting boundaries between work life and home life. They're thinking about mental health. You know, it's something that has really risen in the profile of companies throughout this period of the pandemic, which I think is a positive thing. You know, companies actually have to really think about being an employer of choice, that people actually do want to go and work for them, that they offer benefits and the environment and the culture that people actually want to work in, which, you know, even things like there's been a shift towards perhaps more output-based working. Some companies have realized that more hours worked don't necessarily equal more productivity. And so, you know, there's been a change around thinking about how they can support the workforce and how they can encourage people to be more productive and more effective, and also happier in their work and really want to work for that organisation.
Thanks, Sam. And I just want to ask a bit of a follow-up there, just to make it really clear to our audience. Why are all those things that you've mentioned so fundamental to quality?
You need people to be engaged. For a good quality management system, you need the people on that journey with you. And so, you know, it's really all about setting the environment for that and creating the culture for quality within an organization and its partners. So, you know, we do need to think about supply chain, customers, and all of those other interested parties as well.
Thank you. Alison, if I can come to you, we're in a particular stage of this pandemic. It seems to me that whenever we think we're in a stage, we're actually in a different stage because change again. So I just wanted to ask you about how workers that you come across, that you work with, are reacting to this sort of constant evolution of the pandemic and the effects of the pandemic, how it may affect how they're working, it may affect how they're able to socialize or interact in the world, whether they're wearing a mask or not, all those things. What are you seeing in your region? Are people adapting well or not? Is there a mixed response or is it a coordinated response?
Sally, it's mixed, but one of the things that Sam mentioned, I'd like to pivot from, is that I'm seeing increased empowerment of the worker, whether or not it has been facilitated by the organization, by management or not, but they are demanding more and they can make a choice. Another thing that I've found is that with going through the stages of the pandemic, with people getting back into work, it almost differentiated the environments that people wanted to go back to work in. And so you found that this push, there are some organizations that are struggling with getting people to a happy medium coming back in. And when you delve deep into that, you work with these organizations and you do the diagnostics, you find out sometimes, well, there was a problem before. It was not really a happy, engaged people environment, even pre-COVID. And so the challenge is getting people back in. And there are some that people want to go back in. They really are so happy to come in, mingle with people, be part of the system. And so what it's speaking to in all cases, it's putting the attention on the people, the happiness of the people. How do we get them involved? What is really engagement in terms of sharing the objectives, the purpose of the organization? And, you know, so never mind if you were ISO 9001 certified before or whatever, and suddenly that aspect of people management, I think, is being emphasized so much more by leaps and bounds because of the pandemic.
I think you're absolutely right. The pandemic has really shone a light for some organisations, perhaps less enlightened organisations, that if they don't have a happy workforce, they're very fragile ultimately. It can all fall apart very, very quickly. Gone are the days of a disposable workforce where you can just get rid of one person and bring in somebody new. And that seems to be the experience you're reflecting, that people are going, no, I won't do that anymore. Which is, you know, I think in the long run, that's got to be a good thing, because we know that engaged workers, workers who feel valued, they lead to a better organisation. They lead to more successful organisations, but they also lead to organisations that look after their customers, because if they're valued, they value their customers, they value the products and services they're providing, they're proud of them. If you don't like your employer, you're not going to give them good service. Your products and services are likely to be a little bit wobbly, and I don't want to hear how you talk to your customers if they have a complaint. I suspect they won't be following the guidance that Gustavo and his team have provided. Gustavo, do you think these changes in work patterns and this empowerment, these different ways of working with far more people now working remotely permanently, or certainly much more often, do you think it's going to affect quality in the long term?
Yes, I think so. My feeling is that positively or negatively can affect quality in the long term, because it depends on the ability of the companies and the way they work with their people to align with the new way to work, new conditions for the processes, the different way to communicate with the customers, the different way to deliver their products and services, and so on, is very important for quality. The customers' needs and expectations are changing with this situation, and the resilience and the ability of the companies to align with these new requirements or these new expectations is fundamental for the continuity or the success, the future success of the company. And for sure, the different way the people is working today than the previous pandemic situation will change the outcomes of the quality management system. Is the planification and the context evaluation and risk evaluation in the company is not adequate. So the long-term impact for sure will have a long-term impact, and perhaps the companies will need to find an equilibrium between the pre-pandemic and post-pandemic situation, and find a way to balance the both situation, because the home working, the people is alone at home working in a process which is managed digitally, and the relationship between people is more cold, is more distant, and that in that way the quality can feel the consequences, because if the communication is not so strong as to be everybody in the same page, it's difficult to have a kind of assurance of quality within the processes of the organization. So it's very important to monitor the processes, to make risk assessments, to make results assessments, to evaluate the processes results, and redesign the quality factor in the company to align them with the new way to work. But if you are effective in doing that, perhaps you will have a good impact or a positive impact in the long term. But if you are not so agile or not so flexible to adapt, the impact could be, you can be successful in the short term, but if you don't adapt in the long term, your sustained success is not assured. So in that sense, I think it depends on the capability of the company to adapt to the new reality.
Thanks, Gustavo. And you've really underlined a point that Alison was making earlier about processes and people. They're linked. You can't disentangle them. People may have a perception that quality is only about systems and processes, but they are inextricably linked. And you're right. If you don't manage that side of it, the other side of it isn't going to work either.
And the relationship management is also very important in people aspects.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I want to talk a little bit more about this holistic approach. If we can go to the next slide, please. And, you know, we often focus on ISO 9001. It's been nice today because actually we focused a little bit more on 10001 to 10004, which are just as important, but sometimes overlooked as guidance standards. But ISO 9004, which talks about the quality of the organization for sustained success rather than the quality of products and services, is another really important guidance document. Sam, how do you think standards like ISO 9004 impact the people aspects of quality management?
Yeah, I think it's really important what you were just saying then, Sally, about, you know, quality management is more than ISO 9001. You know, there's so much around quality management that is covered in these other standards, such as the 10,000 series and the likes of 9004. And I'm a great exponent that really people should know more about them because they're so valuable and add so much value to organizations. So 9004 does cover more about the people aspects. It stresses the importance of trust and integrity and culture. And really, you know, when we're talking about people, that's what I think that we're talking about. It is that more holistic approach to culture. How do you build that environment for management and quality? You know, thinking about success, including demographic development, changing values, diversity, capacity, flexibility, also that competence, learning and development piece. You know, it's so important that organizations are bringing people on the journey with them. You don't have an organization without people. So it's really, really important. Not sure if I answered your question there, Sally, but
I don't know. We'll find out. See if people ask more questions. But at this point, I would like to bring in our first question which I've held over. Gustavo mentioned right early on in our discussions, customer satisfaction. And this question I would like to know, is customer the same as stakeholder interested parties as in 9001? Does it mean the same thing? In 9004, is it the same thing? Sam?
Sorry, the customer, is it the same thing in 9004 as 9001? Well, I would say yes and no, because you can have all sorts of customers. They're not necessarily just the people that buy your product, I would argue. So for instance, within an organization, you can have internal customers as well. So that's where I think it brings into 9004 and this whole kind of concept of all interested parties are important, and you need to focus on all of those needs and expectations, not just perhaps the final end purchaser of whatever product or service that you're offering.
And 9004, of course, really stresses the importance of treating everybody as if they were your primary customer, doesn't it? So it's almost flipping that question on its head. Actually, interested parties are the same as customers, rather than customers being in interested parties. It's very much a focus on relevant. It's all about the relevant interested parties, of course, because your competitors are interested parties. You perhaps don't want to treat them quite as well as other interested parties, because
but you need to take, sorry, Sally, but yes, but you need to take their needs and expectations into consideration. You don't necessarily need to give them what they want, but you need to consider them.
Thank you, Sam. Louisa, ISO 9004 has a focus on the identity of an organisation. Can you explain a bit more what that means for our audience's benefit? But also, how might an organisation's identity change over the long term?
Okay, yes. The identity of an organization is determined by its characteristics, like it's based on its mission, vision, value, and culture. In other words, is what the organization is or what the organizations are. In the long term, some element of the identity may be vary, will change to adapt to different contexts, technologies, generations, as they develop. But other elements will be maintained or keep as they are or strengthened, such as certain non-negotiable values, something that you cannot, for example, ethics. So maybe it's that I hope that a value that it's going not to change in the long term, but that the organization has to take into account. So like people or like humans being or organizations' identity will be molded as it evolves when passing the time regarding the context, but also you have to maintain the essence of the organizations. They cannot lose their north. So that's important things. So that's about that identity is going to change, but sometimes it's going to evolve. We can say that.
And this very much comes back to that concept of culture that we were talking about before, doesn't it? The culture's not static, it's dynamic, it changes. We're back to context, I guess. Context drives everything as well. Gustavo, do you think 9004, use of 9004 and that holistic approach to creating a quality organisation rather than just quality products and services, does that accelerate an organisation's ability to improve the values for their people in the future, given that we are talking about dynamism and change?
Yes, I think that is very important. When you speak about 9004 and the sustainable success and the quality of management and not the qualities management, the people became more and more important for this kind of thinking, or this kind of rationale, because the people is the key factor here in the competitive factor for the organization to develop their intentions, to develop their objectives, to fulfill what they are planning to do. So the people value in this kind of management is much more important than in quality management, only thinking in quality management. So it's important to work in knowledge and skills for the people to assure the quality, but the commitment, the empowerment, the motivation, and so on is really a factor which is involved in the sustainable success of the company. Not only we will need to assure that the people is knowing what to do. You need the people involved in the objective, involved in the success of the company, and the only way to do that is to watch the picture in a broader with a broader lens, and to involve the people in this kind of processes. So I think ISO 9004 is a kind of accelerator for this kind of relationship between the companies and the people who are part of the company. Is a really important factor.
Thank you, Gustavo. 9004 does put quite a lot of focus on learning and development, innovation, competence. Alison, do you have any tips for organisations on how they can positively impact the people in their organisation and the people they interact with, those relevant interested parties that we were just talking about?
Thanks, Sally. You know, I love this standard. To answer your question, I'll first to reference the 9004, because as Sam mentioned, it focuses on the organization. I use it as a precursor, in fact, when dealing with a lot of companies who are interested in putting in place the quality management system standard. But why I draw reference to this is because it recognizes that first you need to bring clarity to your purpose, your raison d'etre. Why are you in existence? Set clear objectives. And that's a key, a number one for getting engaged people. They need to, and very often you find people working within an organization at different levels, and yes, there are mission, vision statements, all stuck up everywhere, but they do not understand the core purpose of the organization. Why does it exist, and how the relationship with regards to the context. And this 9004 starts off with this. 9004, I think, also recognizes in every single element where it deals with down, as it's been mentioned before, the learning, the improvement, that people are involved. And we keep people's interest by newness, introducing change. In fact, as difficult as it is to manage, if you don't recognize that you're not in an evolving position and you stay stagnant, doing the same thing all the time, your voices aren't heard, meaning that you don't have a mechanism in place for capturing mistakes, lessons learned, bringing people together to review, to give the ideas, all of which the standard speaks to. Here you go. You get these are ideas to keep your people satisfied and engaged. It also provides an opportunity to notice their contributions, because it's not about a culture of hiding a mistake, but yes, talking about that mistake I've done and a mechanism to elevate it to senior management, give recommendations. So recognition, importance to the human being, the people within an organization. And so if I had to summarize, these tips, one, get everybody sold on the purpose of the organization, what you're about, the organization's strategic priorities in a very simple format. Two, give them some means of measuring their work, their progress. Three, recognize it, hear their voices, their suggestions, all aspects that are addressed in 9004. Thanks, Annie.
Thank you, Alison. And I think it's a good time to mention that SC3 is actually later this year going to publish a new standard, isn't it, Gustavo? Do you want to say something about it?
About the 10,010. Yes. Yes, it was a proposal a few years ago from, I think it was coming from China, the new work item proposal. And we received a new work item proposal to study to study guidance for developing the quality culture within the organization. And for them and from my point of view, is a very interesting guidance document we are developing at the moment. And see, I hope that this year, before the end of this year, is published. The problematic we state there is that together with the implementation of a quality management system, it's very important to modify or to reset the quality culture within the organization, because without that is kind of reaction mode. No, it's a kind of system which is reacting to the development or to the requirements established in the standard. But if you don't have a quality culture within the organization, it's very difficult to go on and to move the organization in the sense you need. Perhaps you fulfill the requirements, but the quality culture is not going with the requirements, and it's a heavy work to move a quality management system which is not supported by quality culture. So this standard is going to be published, I think, this year, and it will have a guidance in such important issue within the companies that are implementing quality management systems based on ISO 9001.
Thanks, Gustavo. And if we go to the next slide, I think actually we've covered a lot of this already, but there are one or two questions I'd still like to ask. And I'm going to come to Louisa first, and it is a little bit unexpected, this question for you, for which I apologise. We both work together and did both work together on the development of ISO 45001 for occupational health and safety management, another management system, but one which places at the heart of it participation and consultation of workers, which the quality management standards traditionally don't. 9004 certainly puts more emphasis on it. But given everything we have discussed today, do you think it is something that may need to come into the quality standards in future? I think it was Alison who said, you know, if you involve people in things, if they have ownership over it, they believe in it better. Is it something you would like to see in the quality standards?
Yes. It's interesting because I think all the elements are important, but people is very important because we work with people and we work for people. So it is important to have them in the heart, as we can say, of the management systems. It's not only because, as Sam and Alison and Gustavo have said, to engage people is very important, because if the people is not have that commitment with the organization, if they don't believe on that, if they are not aware of their importance in that, if they don't know how to contribute. So you can say that the management system is not going to, or the quality management is not going to work very well. As you said before, if a person is not motivated, you can imagine how it's going to answer if you are going for a support. So maybe it's bad attitude, or maybe is the person is not going to do its best effort to try to respond or to be kind, but just because sometimes when you are not happy, the stress, or you are so stressed, you cannot respond very well, even if you want it. So it sounds in your voice or in your attitude. So that is going to reflect in the final, in the customer. So that's why it's important to involve people, because people makes the management system. People are the one that is and that you are trying to meet their needs and expectations, not only the customer, but also interested parties, the workers, everybody. So it's very important to focus on people in these standards a little bit more.
Thanks, Louisa. And Sam, 9004 talks about continually emerging factors for success. And this kind of relates to what Louisa is saying, really. How does an organisation harness people's ability to recognise those factors to help drive that sustained success?
So I think, again, that really falls down to having that culture and the environment for effective quality management, having the right people and leadership who are empowering people to identify those emerging risks and opportunities. Remembering also what Alison was saying earlier about, you also have to have the right environment where there's consideration for what happens when things don't quite go to plan, because it's that approach to failure that will determine whether or not people will feel comfortable to propose ideas and to make suggestions for innovations. So, and having that broader approach also, I think, to interested parties. So it's not just focusing on customers or even people within the organization, but, for instance, how can you work better with your supply chain, or how could improved relationships with the community in which your organization works have a mutual benefit? How can you identify and harness new approaches to emerging or existing issues so that you can build somewhere that those ideas for innovation can flourish? It's all very much about people, environment, and culture that enables everybody to kind of work together and recognise these factors that are going to drive sustained success. Sorry, can I say, Sally, as well? I think it's something that's becoming more and more important as customers and investors are looking not just at the product and service that's being produced, but actually the environment that it's being produced in. They're wanting to see evidence of ethics and sustainability as well. Sorry, thank you.
Please don't be sorry. I was just going to say how interesting it is, and almost how obvious, I guess, is that in the previous session that we had that was talking about innovation and agility and emerging technologies, the two different sessions, all of the things that you're all saying now have also been brought up, and how important people are. I wanted to just sort of say about, the mention of the importance of failure. We had a huge discussion about that in the last webinar, that if you are in an organisation where you are not allowed to fail, you will never innovate and you will never go forwards. So it's just really fascinating how it's all tied together, all of these different emerging trends, and we've all had small groups of experts go and explore them and write small papers on them and give us some reference material for more in-depth reading, but they're all linked. And ultimately, they're all linked to whether your organisation is going to survive or not, and whether it's going to do well or not. I wanted to come back to you, Alison, just briefly on the question of empowered workers. I was wondering what you were seeing in businesses where you work. Are the top management reacting well to their empowered workers? Are they adapting to that change of a more empowered workforce?
Mm-hmm. So it depends on the profile of the top managers. We have a lot of small and medium-sized businesses, family businesses, and we found that what you find, and I think it's no different with these sort of that profile of businesses throughout the world, where if you have the owner who has grown with the business and set involved, calcified, and the board is comprised of just himself and or herself or another family member, very small, it's very difficult to infuse the change that's needed. I mean, the young entrepreneurs, dynamic, yes, but in many cases when it's like this with the family-owned businesses, you try to tackle the top, like from the board of directors, and try to allow for the slight departure from day-to-day involvement in the business that really steps in the way of recognizing that, yes, the employee wants to feel part and ownership to this as much as you are in order to give of the best. Another thing that has been helping is that, you know, the younger workforce really wouldn't have it any other way, just naturally, you know. They probably don't even know anything about quality or even couldn't make a difference whether or not it's pandemic or not pandemic. But they want to feel part of this purpose, otherwise they get bored very easily and they move on. So it helps when you have the leadership being flexible, not a fixed mindset, fixed in their ways, but willing to embrace just that change, uncertainty, and getting people to share in the ownership, quote unquote, of the business objectives and purposes. Yeah. I think that answers the question.
I think so. Thank you very much. Okay, we only have around 10 minutes left, so we do need to move on. And I'd just like to ask each of you about potential revisions, future revisions of ISO 9001. Most people on this call will, I'm sure, be aware that the standard is currently stable. It is not going into revision at this time following a ballot of member bodies. So for the time being, nothing is happening. But at some point it will change. Our world is changing. I guess at some point we'll need to update our standard. So thinking about the future, do you think people aspects need to be more central to the requirements of ISO 9001? Or is it enough? Is the guidance enough? Is it okay? Alison, I'm going to come to you first on that, please.
Sally, I think and you know, the decision to keep ISO 9001 2015 the same amidst all of what's going on, because I mean it was based on survey results, etc., I think provides testimony to how the value of the design, what was put into designing that standard to make it applicable and flexible to any situation or environment. Where I think the issues need to be the focus of attention is perhaps not so much with respect to what's in the standard, but with regards to what's happening with the standard outside of the standards development process, the commercialization, the certification, and this misconception where along the supply chain, it is being pushed as a must to do business, that third-party certification. And we feel it a lot within the region. I'll tell you why, because let's say for Trinidad, the oil and gas sector, and you have heavy investments from globalized companies, you know, and they have it as prerequisites for dealing with the small businesses within the supply chain. So you have businesses come to you, I just want to be certified, I don't care. Nobody on the board or the senior management never even read the standard, or they don't even care. And once it starts from that front, I refuse and refer the work to somebody else, because you really want to be dealing with people who appreciate the purpose of the management system for sustainability of the business. And if we're willing to talk some of the language of ISO 9004, then you catch my attention, of which certification to 9001 is just an icing on the cake, by the way, if you decide to do so. So if anything, the standard 9001, since it's the most widely marketed, should almost explicitly make reference to guidance from other standards, such as 9004, etc., as prerequisites. That would be my suggestion. And of course, other standards. Thanks.
So just throw in all of the guidance from 9004 into the requirements of 9001 and Alison will be happy. She doesn't ask for much. Ah, brilliant. Okay, I'm going to come to Gustavo next. Do you think there needs to be more explicit people focus in 9001?
Okay, I think that the quality concept is changing during the time, and the interests of the customers of the organization are more wider than the characteristic of the product or services they get from the organization. They are interested in the environmental aspects, in sustainability aspects, in social responsibility, and so on. These are aspects covered by different management system standards also within the ISO, but I think the quality concept will be more broader than that focused on the characteristics of the product and services that are provided by the company. So people is involved in all the processes that are related with the expectation of the customer, of a company. So I think people is one of the most important drivers in the quality management for the future, because we need to enlarge the scope of quality concept within the companies, and the people is involved in everything there, in communication, in relationship, in the way they interact with the customers, in the way they create the personality of the company. The people is really a key factor there. So I think people is one of the most potential growing aspects within quality management.
So Gustavo, was that a long yes? You would like to see some requirements?
Definitely. Oh, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You want
okay.
It's just a yes. Okay, I learn.
Brilliant, thank you. Louisa, what's your view?
Okay, well, I say also yes. I think it's very important, not only for what we have heard here, but also we have to take into account that new things go as the internet, the social media has increasingly the part of customer experience that you have to improve. So it is important to include a people aspect, because at the end, your experience as a customer in an organization depends a lot of people that is giving that service or providing that product. So I think it is important to include a little bit more about that, maybe in a more simple way. Sometimes we have standards are not very easy sometimes to understand for people. We have also guidance, but sometimes the guidance is not reflecting maybe a sector like terminology or a simple way to speak. So sometimes we need to be more aware of that and try to provide better requirements and guidance easily to understand for people regarding exactly people aspects and to that.
And that's very much related to a whole other piece of work that's going on about the future of management system standards at the moment, about language and accessibility, inclusivity, diversity, across the whole board. So it may not, yeah, you're so glad you brought it up, Louisa, because we haven't talked about it at all. And yet, just like sustainability, these are key components in our world. We know that they're important, and yet our standards aren't quite there yet, are they?
Exactly. The idea is that people can identify or reflect their experience in the standard. I mean that it is easier for them to say, oh, here I see myself reflected in that, I can do that, or I need to do that, or this is me, this is my role. So sometimes it's not so easy to identify that in the standard.
Thank you, Louisa. Sam, I'm giving you about half a minute to answer the question because we've run out of time again.
I'll say yes. And also, I think absolutely I agree with everything that everybody has said. It's that awareness piece as well. Let's not worry too much even about what ISO 9001 says about people aspects. Let's engage people and make them aware that actually what they can do. You know, 9001 tells you the minimum. Let's go beyond that. Let's look at 9004 and these other standards and just what's right for their organization. But yes, absolutely, it's so, so important.
Thank you, Sam, and I'm so sorry to rush you. We have got one question in here that we haven't answered, well, two actually, but one of them's too long to answer now. But one person has said, do you think when reviewing the standards, we should start to include UN objectives? I assume that means the Sustainable Development Goals. And I just wanted to assure our attendee that we do. We are doing that already, and we have mapped our standards against the UN Sustainability Development Goals. They are available on our website, and as if by magic, there is the link to our website. Do go and have a look at what we're doing, do explore it, and do get in touch. Stay in touch with us. We need to hear from you. We do want to hear your questions. We do want to hear about your challenges, your initiatives, your good ideas, bad practices, the whole lot, because it's only by your involvement that standards get written. They are for you. So please do talk to us. And now it's over. So I must just say thank you to all of those attendees who came and listened to our conversation tonight. We really appreciate it. We hope you'll come along again when we do another one of these sessions. And to my colleagues, the wonderful panel that we've had today, thank you. Thank you, Alison. Thank you, Gustavo. Thank you, Louisa. Thank you, Sam. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I hope you have too. And I hope we do it all again soon. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.